This video was created by VinylicPuma of VinylicPumaGaming.
Whoa. Is this the last Borderlands manufacturer's countdown? You know, it only seems like yesterday that we first started talking about Dahl and Jacob's Guns and Weapons. While I would say that all of the other manufacturers from Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel definitely had some really good weapons, I think it's worth mentioning that 7 of the 9 weapons on this list are some of the best weapons from their respective games. After all, I think it's going to be pretty hard to compete with the number 1 entry on this particular list. But before I ruin this list anymore, these will be the top 9 best Maliwan Guns and Weapons in Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel. Let's go. Number 9, the Volcano. Yes, I do know that the Maliwan Sniper is better on Zero, Maya, and probably other characters like Gage and Salvador, but the Volcano is possibly one of Axton's best sniper rifles. This is mostly because unlike the vast majority of other snipers in Borderlands 2, the Maliwan Volcano benefits from grenade damage bonus from skills as well as class mods. Assuming your badass rank is high enough, you might actually deal more damage with the Volcano than the Maliwan Sniper. Now, with that said though, the Volcano does have its limitations. The first being that the Volcano can only come in fire elements, and the second being that it's lower base damage compared to the Maliwan Sniper. The main reason the Sniper is better on the other characters in Borderlands 2 is simply because the Maliwan Sniper has superior base damage overall. Plus, the Maliwan Sniper can also come in all elements, and that also hurts the Volcano somewhat. It's really a shame that it can't come in more elements, but even still, on Axton, you really should be using the Volcano. However, on everyone else, use the Maliwan Sniper. Number 8, the Hellfire. So like the Volcano, the Hellfire is limited by the fact that it can only come in fire element. It sucks because I do wish that Gearbox would have made corrosive and shock versions of the legendary Hellfire SMG, albeit with like a different name and maybe a different weapon skin. Maybe they could have made the Scorpion and then maybe the Storm, not to be confused with the Storm sniper rifle, although that would be pretty funny. After all, there are 2 legendary weapons in Borderlands 1 that are called the Invader, and the best part is that they're from the same manufacturer, and they are both red, so maybe Gearbox, maybe in Borderlands 3, I don't know. But back to the Hellfire. So the Hellfire is definitely one of the best SMGs that Maliwan has on offer, and appears in both Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel. Overall, the Hellfire has pretty decent DPS, and that comes from a combination of both the projectile-based as well as the damage over time-based damage types. Plus, like the Volcano, the Hellfire does receive bonuses to its damage through a grenade damage bonus, so that's also pretty good as well. While there are definitely better SMGs out there in the form of the Dahl Sandhawk or maybe the Bandit Tetler, you can't really go wrong with the Maliwan Hellfire. If you're in a pinch and this is the only gun you've got, it's definitely better than many of the other weapons in Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel. Number 7, the Magic Missile. Unfortunately, the Magic Missile didn't make its way into Borderlands the pre-sequel. This grenade always comes in slag element, and it is primarily designed to slag enemies. It accomplishes this by seeking targets out after you initially throw it, via like a homing ability. Now, plus like many of the other Maliwan spell grenades that got added with Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragonkeep DLC for Borderlands 2, the Magic Missile also regenerates grenades over time. Now, the Magic Missile does come in 2 different versions. The first is the blue or quote-unquote rare rarity and only consists of 2 homing projectiles, while the second is the purple or the quote-unquote very rare rarity and consists of 4 homing projectiles. If you do get the chance, you're definitely going to want that purple version. Regardless, this is an essential grenade mod in many players' builds. Definitely won't pick one of these up if you get the chance. Number 6, the Thunderfire. As the name implies, this is a dual element weapon consisting of both fire and shock damage. While the weapon initially fires shock projectiles, these shock projectiles explode on impact, producing mini fire novas. Provided you're within an atmosphere in Borderlands the pre-sequel, you can actually trigger both a shock and fire damage over time effect simultaneously. This effect becomes extremely useful on Athena for gaining Maelstrom stacks relatively quickly. the combination of both the shock and fire damage is pretty much a death sentence for most fire-vulnerable enemies that have shields. The shock damage breaks the shield, while the fire damage decimates whatever health is left underneath. The only thing that I would say that would make this gun better is if it had a projectile multiplier to where you could fire multiple shots for the cost of just one laser ammo. If you do like the pre-sequel, farming Despair and Self-Loathing for one of these is definitely worth it. Number 5, the Old Rosie. So I've always called this the Rosie as opposed to the Old Rosie. Now, there's not really anything especially special about the Old Rosie, other than it's a very powerful Maliwan beam laser that you can acquire at the very end of your second playthrough of Borderlands the pre-sequel. If you also decide to continue into Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, you can also acquire the Rosie once you've beaten that difficulty as well. The Rosie has high continuous damage bonus, decent base damage, and unlike the other Maliwan beam laser on this list, it can come in all elements. So pretty much all of the characters can make great use of the Rosie. Wilhelm boosts laser damage in general. Athena can use this through her Maelstrom skill, provided that you have a fire or shock version, and even Aurelia, with her ability to boost the potential of cryo weapons, can make great use of the cryo version of the Old Rosie. For you Borderlands the pre-sequel veterans out there, the Rosie was originally nerfed. It originally had like 500% continuous damage bonus. Now it has about 368% continuous damage bonus or so. So it got a pretty decent debuff, but overall it is still a fantastic weapon. Number 4, the Absolute Zero. So the Absolute Zero is a very similar weapon to the Rosie, however it has much higher base damage and it also has superior continuous damage bonus. Unlike the Rosie, the Absolute Zero can only come in cryo element and is somewhat limited thanks to its relatively low magazine size. Even still, I would say that you'll find that the Absolute Zero is still going to be superior to the Rosie, especially on characters like Athena or Jack, who have the ability to negate the small magazine size through some of their skills. And even Aurelia also makes great use of the Absolute Zero, as many of her skills boosts cryo damage beyond what is possible on the other characters in the game. And really even Wilhelm even makes good use of the Absolute Zero, as he can use this weapon to set enemies up by freezing them with the Absolute Zero, and then he can punch them with his Power Fist skill to deal a ton of damage to mob enemies. Now, the only problem with the Absolute Zero is that it can only be acquired from EOS and Eclipse, and it's not even a guaranteed drop. The Rosie, on the other hand, is a guaranteed drop, provided you turn the final mission back into Jack at the very end of your second and third playthroughs, so it might take you a while to get the Absolute Zero. Number 3, the Pimpernel. So I never really think of the Pimpernel as a Maliwan weapon, maybe because of the Dahl sniper barrel, but then again, I do think of the Godfinger as a Jacob's weapon, and it also has a Dahl sniper barrel. Maybe it's just the Pimpernel's aesthetic look that makes me associate it with another manufacturer. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Borderlands 2, the Pimpernel is heralded as one of, if not the very best sniper rifles in Borderlands 2. While it's initially difficult to learn how to use, provided the player aims at either an enemy's knee or at their crotch, you can score a massive amount of damage from the secondary orbs that come into contact with your enemies. If there was one character this sniper rifle was made for, it is arguably Zero, as he can combine the Pimpernel with Bore to achieve ridiculous amounts of damage. The best part about the Pimpernel is that it's a quest reward weapon and that it comes in all elements. And this particular quest that you have to complete is fairly easy. And that is a trait that is uncommon among some of the best guns and weapons in Borderlands 2. Number 2, the Grog Nozzle. This is yet another weapon I don't really associate with Maliwan for some reason. While it's not a particularly great gun on its own, both its healing properties as well as the ability to boost the critical hit damage of weapons makes it a force to be reckoned with on all characters. However, Salvador the Gunzerker can make best use of its abilities thanks to the fact that he can dual wield two weapons at the same time. Now, the Grog Nozzle has become the cornerstone of many players' builds for Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, as well as the overpowered difficulty levels that are for Ultimate Vault Hunter mode. The insane healing ability helps counteract enemies' high damage and will keep you up and fighting for much longer. In fact, the Grog Nozzle makes certain playstyles like Melee Zero and even the Gunzerker in general possible at the OP8 level. Now, the Grog Nozzle is good, but the final weapon on this list is definitely better. Number 1, the Pyrophobia. I'm just kidding. The Norfleet. So this final entry is going to be pretty obvious, but the Norfleet is much like the original as well as the more recent reboot of Doom's BFG 9000. And just as the red text says in Borderlands 2, the Norfleet literally blows up everything. I think it's safe to say that the Norfleet is Borderlands 2's best rocket launcher. You can't really compete with massive damage to start, a triple projectile multiplier, as well as a massive blast radius. It may be difficult to miss with those initial rocket projectiles, however, it would be a challenge to not deal damage to your enemies while firing this particular weapon. I'd really like to see the Norfleet return in Borderlands 3. I do understand that it's really overpowered, but I think it's a fair reward for killing the likes of Hyperius or going to the trouble of spawning a creature like Vermivorous. The Norfleet might just be the best gun or weapon in Borderlands 2 overall. Alright guys, that's going to pretty much wrap up this particular video, and remember, the Pyrophobia is the best rocket launcher in Borderlands 2. Alright guys, take care and I'll see y'all next time.